The Operator Log, Episode 1: How we think. The difference between an automated business and an autonomous one, defining the new unit of labor in the age of autonomy. Most companies using AI right now are getting faster at doing things they should not be doing at all. That is the efficiency trap, and it is the first thing we need to dismantle. The assumption driving most AI transformation programs is that speed is the goal. Make the workflow faster, give the team better tools, automate the repetitive tasks. This is not wrong, it just is not ambitious. What Arco builds is something different, not a faster version of an existing business, a different kind of business entirely, one whose core operations run without human intervention by design, not by accident. That distinction between a business that has been automated and a business that is autonomous is the argument this episode makes. It is not a distinction of degree, it is a distinction of architecture. This is the operator log. Automation and autonomy are not points on the same spectrum. They are two entirely different architectural decisions, and conflating them is the most expensive mistake companies make when they enter the AI era. Here is the precise distinction. Automation takes a workflow designed for human execution, with all its handoffs, approvals, and coordination overhead, and makes specific tasks within that workflow faster. The human structure is assumed to be correct. The process remains the same. The technology provides a speed boost to selected steps within it. Automation is an optimization of the status quo. Consider what that looks like in practice. A customer support team still routes every ticket through 3 people, but now uses an AI to draft the first reply in 4 seconds instead of 12. The workflow is unchanged. The meetings to decide who owns the reply are unchanged. The escalation path to a senior agent is unchanged. Only the typing is faster. That is automation. A productivity gain captured inside an architecture that was not designed to be autonomous and is not becoming autonomous. The ceiling on output is still determined by the structure of the system, not by the capacity of the technology. You are running the same race in better shoes. Autonomy is a different operation entirely. Autonomy begins by questioning the structure itself, not just the speed of execution within it. An autonomous business is engineered from the ground up with one architectural goal. The core operations should run without requiring human intervention to function. The logic is rebuilt for agents, not adapted for them. The workflow is not accelerated. It is replaced. The human is not made more productive. The human is removed from the revenue loop by design and replaced by a system architected to make that removal structurally sound. One optimizes the past, the other architecturally replaces it. At Arco, we do not build automated businesses. We build autonomous ones, and the difference shows up in a single measurable outcome, a 10-to-1 revenue-to-headcount advantage over industry benchmarks. To make that concrete, if a legacy firm in a given market requires 100 people to generate 50 million in annual revenue, an autonomous firm operating in the same market is architected to generate that same 50 million with 10 people, not through layoffs, not through productivity software, not through a process improvement program, through a fundamentally different architecture of value delivery. One where the operational logic runs independently of the number of people who are watching it. You cannot get there through automation. The math does not work because automation still requires a human structurally present in the system, not necessarily at every step, but somewhere. There is still a manager whose job is to verify, to escalate, to trigger the next action when the automated step completes. That human is not a waste. In a legacy system, they are performing necessary coordination work, but they are also a structural cost, a latency, and a ceiling. As long as the human is structurally required, the ratio of revenue to headcount is bounded by what a human workforce costs. Remove the structural necessity of the human from the revenue-generating loop. Rebuild the logic so it runs whether or not anyone is watching, and the ceiling lifts. Not because people are gone, but because the role of people has changed. They are no longer the mechanism. They are the architects of the mechanism. That is an entirely different business model, not a more efficient version of the previous one. Most of the advice in circulation about AI transformation focuses on the wrong variable. It asks, how do we make our people more effective? That is not a bad question. It is just insufficient if the goal is structural leverage. The right question is harder. How do we rebuild this so that the human effectiveness is no longer the constraint on output? When companies start asking that question seriously, they stop building automated businesses and start building autonomous ones. The failure of most corporate AI transformation programs is not a technology failure. It is an architectural failure, and it follows a consistent pattern. A company deploys AI tools across its existing teams. Individual productivity improves. Tasks that took 2 hours take 30 minutes. Reports that required 3 people now require 1. The early results look compelling. The program is declared a success. Then the ceiling arrives. The AI tools have reached the limits of what they can do within the structure they were given. The teams are faster, but the team structure is unchanged. The approval chains are unchanged. The coordination mechanisms are unchanged. What has happened is optimization. What has not happened is a reconstruction. And the reconstruction is the only path to structural leverage. The reason the ceiling arrives is structural, not technical. The legacy business was designed around human handoffs. Every function boundary is a handoff point. Every approval gate is a handoff point. Every status update, every alignment meeting, every cross-functional email thread. These are the mechanisms that exist because humans cannot read each other's state the way a system can. They exist to compensate for the coordination cost of human execution. That compensation has a name in the Arco lexicon, the coordination tax. The coordination tax is the overhead cost of human-to-human alignment in a traditionally structured business. It is the meetings required to keep departments synchronized, the status updates required to move a decision from one function to the next, the approval gates that exist because trust has not been encoded in the architecture. In a legacy firm, this tax consumes approximately 30% of the operating budget, not because the people are incompetent, not because the processes were designed carelessly, because the structure was built around the human handoffs, and the human handoffs require coordination overhead by definition. The tax is not a malfunction, it is a feature of the architecture. Consider a typical invoice approval process in a services firm. The accountant prepares the invoice, the project manager reviews it, the finance lead approves it, and the operations director signs off before it goes to the client. Each handoff adds a day or two of calendar time and creates another meeting to explain context that was already known upstream. 4 people, 4 handoffs, 4 delays, for a task whose logic is entirely deterministic. An autonomous system does not think, it executes. The logic is embedded in the architecture, not in the calendar. That specific process, invoice approval, is Tier 1 work by any rigorous classification. It has fixed rules, known inputs, and a binary output. The only reason it requires 4 humans is that the system was never designed to run without them. Adding AI to that structure does not eliminate the coordination tax. It can reduce it at the margin, if the AI tools take over some of the status update and reporting work that currently requires human time. But the structural source of the tax remains intact. You still have the function boundaries. You still have the approval chains. You still have the manager whose job is to ensure alignment between teams that cannot read each other's state directly. Until you remove the structure that required the coordination in the first place, the tax continues to accumulate. This is why AI transformation programs that do not touch the architecture consistently plateau. The technology improves execution within the structure. The structure itself keeps generating the tax. The net gain is real, but bounded. There is a related metric we use internally at Arco to measure the health of an autonomous business, and it is worth naming here because it reframes what we are optimizing for. We call it operational drag. The precise definition: operational drag is the ratio of non-revenue generating work to total operational capacity. How much of the system's output is consumed by tasks that sustain the organization rather than tasks that serve the customer and generate revenue. In a legacy firm, that ratio is structurally high. The coordination tax is one of its primary contributors. In an autonomous business, the architectural goal is to reduce operational drag not by working faster, but by removing the non-revenue generating work from the design entirely. We will develop the full mechanics of operational drag in a future episode. What matters here is the principle it establishes. The right measure of an autonomous business is not how productive the humans are. It is how little of the system's capacity is consumed by work that is not the business. That reframe from productivity to drag is the architectural shift that separates a company that has added AI from a company that has rebuilt itself around AI. One is optimizing within the existing structure. The other is eliminating the structure that created the cost. Building an autonomous business is not a retrofit. You cannot take a company designed around human execution, remove the humans, and expect the logic to hold. It breaks because the logic was never designed to run without the humans. The humans were load-bearing. They were not just executing tasks, they were resolving ambiguity, handling exceptions, and bridging the gaps that the process design left open. Remove them without redesigning the logic that depended on them, and those gaps become failures. This is why clean sheet design is not a preference at Arco. It is a structural requirement. Autonomous businesses are not built by optimizing existing ones. They are built by starting from the question, what would this business look like if a human intervention were the exception rather than the rule? And then designing backward from that answer. The state we are designing toward has a name: architectural certainty. This is a specific and measurable condition. The business logic is so rigorous and the system design so resilient that core operations run without a human decision for extended periods, days or weeks at a time, not because no one is watching, because the architecture was built so that watching is not structurally required for the revenue loop to function. Achieving architectural certainty requires knowing with precision which workflows can be made fully autonomous and which cannot, and drawing those boundaries deliberately rather than by default. To do that, Arco uses the T-tier hierarchy. Every workflow in an autonomous business is classified into one of 3 tiers based on the nature of the decision required. Tier 1 is a routine, scripted work. High volume, low variability, deterministic output. The system executes, logs, and continues without any human decision. In an Arco business, Tier 1 is 100% autonomous. Tier 2 is conditional work. This requires reasoning within a defined set of constraints. The agent must evaluate a situation and choose between options based on rules we set. This is where most automation stops, because rule-based systems cannot handle the judgment calls that Tier 2 requires. It is also where true autonomy begins. Tier 2 is the frontier, the tier where the architectural design decisions compound most quickly. We will map that frontier in detail in a future episode on the T-tier framework. Tier 3 consists of regulated, relationship-critical, or strategically consequential decisions. Legal exposure, fiduciary accountability, novel situations the architecture was not designed to handle. These remain human-centric. Not because we have not tried to automate them, because the cost of an architectural failure in Tier 3 exceeds any efficiency gain. The human is not a bottleneck here. The human is a necessary safeguard. The autonomous business is engineered to handle Tiers 1 and 2 at scale, without touching Tier 3. The 80% threshold is the operating target. 80% of core operational work autonomous, with human intervention reserved for the exceptions the system was designed to surface and escalate. Where you draw the line between Tier 2 and Tier 3 is the most consequential design decision in an autonomous business. Move it too conservatively, and you leave most of the structural leverage unrealized. Move it too aggressively, and you expose the business to failure modes it cannot recover from cleanly. Getting that boundary right and moving it deliberately as the architecture matures is the ongoing design work of running an autonomous business. The metric we use to measure whether the architecture is holding is MTTI, mean time to intervention. MTTI is the average number of hours the core revenue loop runs without requiring a human decision. It is the operational pulse of an autonomous business. The Arco target is greater than 72 hours. If MTTI is declining, something in the architecture is degrading. The system is encountering conditions it was not designed for, or the tier boundaries have been drawn incorrectly. If MTTI is holding or growing, the architecture is sound. MTTI does not measure how much the system does. It measures how independently the system does it. That distinction is everything. Here is the test. If a business requires a manager to ensure the work gets done, it is automated. If the business is the work, if the logic runs whether or not anyone is watching, it is autonomous. Every company Arco builds is designed to pass that test. Not through better tooling, not through more efficient teams, through architecture. Clean sheet design that begins with the question of what needs to be true for the revenue loop to run without human intervention, and then builds backward from that requirement. The coordination tax does not disappear when you add AI to an existing structure. Operational drag does not decline when you optimize within the boundaries the legacy design set. MTTI does not grow when you make the humans faster. These outcomes require reconstruction, not optimization. They require a different starting question, and the willingness to accept that the answer will produce a different kind of company. The full written version of this argument is memo number 1, Automated versus Autonomous, on the blog at arcoventure.studio. The precise definitions of every term introduced in this episode are in the Arco lexicon at arcoventure.studio/lexicon. Next week, what agentic actually means when you are building a business, not a product. Automation extends the life of a model that was already running out of runway. Autonomy replaces the model. The distinction is not a matter of degree, it is a matter of architecture. Here is the point. What is the difference between an automated business and an autonomous one? An automated business uses technology to execute existing human workflows more efficiently. The human structure remains, the tasks just run faster. An autonomous business is engineered from the ground up so that the core operations run without requiring human intervention. The difference is architectural, not technological. Automation is a feature. Autonomy is a design principle. The measurable consequence is a 10-to-1 revenue-to-headcount advantage over industry benchmarks, a ratio that automation by design cannot produce. This has been episode 1 of the Operator Log.